would it be?
I don't know. It's true. You're right. I never, every day is new, but I have a face now to go with your mellifluous voice.
Yes,
This
we
is
actually
good.
did meet in person at a PJ event. So,
I
yes.
know. In person. It's amazing to think that concept never existed. It didn't exist at one point. Like, of course, we were in person. What are the other options? Okay, let's make the blessing on Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvot v'tzivanu v'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay. There's a machloket. There's a the famous machloket that I don't know if we're going to get to is the difference of opinion in the Rishonim and the early commentators. Rishonim were the first commentators. It's a designation given to the medieval commentaries, Rashi, Rambam. These rabbis, the rabbinic authorities that lived in the post-Gaonic period, which itself, the Gaonic period is like the post-Talmudic ratification, talking about the 9th century, 8th, 9th centuries. The rabbis that lived in the 10th century, 11th, 12th, 13th centuries, until the kind of, like history, of course, things shade into each other. There's no, like, this is when the period begins and when it ends, this is the Renaissance, this is the Enlightenment. No, there wasn't like a start line, a beginning. But for the most part, the Rishonim, the early commentators, the most famous of which, again, are Rashi, the great French commentator and rabbi, Rambam, Maimonides, Spanish, and Ramban Nachmanides, also Spanish, and so on. There's a disagreement about the first of the utterances of the Decalogue. Those who know also the Decalogue was like, essentially was repeated daily. It was kind of had a daily occurrence in at some point in Jewish history, and was endangered. I guess the rabbis believed that was in danger of it was a potential threat to the perception that the entire Torah was given by God. Right, the daily repetition of the Decalogue is something special, something unique. They decided that Jews shouldn't say the Decalogue every day. And so we're going to be saying, we chant the Decalogue today, the 10 Commandments, but there was an argument about whether or not it's really 10. Like, how do you number these things? So are they 10 Commandments? Is it 9? Is it 8? And most pointedly, the first of the 10 utterances is something that caused quite a bit of debate when rabbis in the medieval period started to enumerate the mitzvot, the commandments of the Torah. Until that point, there wasn't like a generally accepted number. Like, we knew it was 613 or so, but like, what were the 613 mitzvot? And you only have, in the Middle Ages, you only have rabbis coming along and starting their Reader's Digest of what the 613 were. And these books of what are called minui mitzvot, the counting of the mitzvot, became an important list. Like, what list were you on? Your kiss is on my list, but which is that your list or is it my list? Who says this is one? Is this the first one? Is this first one? So there's a disagreement about the first commandment. Is this a commandment? Is the first commandment a commandment? What's the first commandment? Anochi Adonai Elohecha asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. Right? God says at the opening of what's in chapter 20. It opens with, it seems to be some kind of introduction. God says, hi, allow me to introduce myself to you. Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am the Lord your God. I am, I am Yudhe Vave, your power, your source, whatever you want to translate, who took you out of the land of Egypt. And then, Lo Yelecha Elohim Achiram Panai. And then you can't have any other gods, But what's the nature of that first utterance? Is it a commandment? And what would be the nature of the commandments, right? It doesn't seem to be giving us anything performative or anything. Is it a commandment based in belief? Is it a cognitive commandment? What's the first commandment? I am the Lord your God together. Okay, thank you. What's the commandment? So the famous machloket between Maimonides, famous, like when I say famous, I mean like amongst
very small number,
like the Jews, who study these things, is it a commandment? Rambam seems to think it isn't. Ramban Nachmani seems to think it is. And what's the nature of this agreement has a lot to do with the content and the understanding of what and how fundamental belief in God is. Whether or not, the whole system falls apart if you don't believe if the first one is not there, what about, can you even have the next 612? Is there something about God defining God's self in the first commandment as the one who took you out of Egypt that is important information for us to know about what is being asked? Is it the first word, something about the Anochi, I am? What's going on in the first commandment? So is it a commandment? And that's just one of the questions. I mean, again, I just enumerated a number of other questions. Why Ani, Anochi, is that the way to introduce yourself? A lot of good things in there, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's look at the overall trajectory of this. And then what my plan is next for the next 45 minutes is to look at some of these sources, to look at each piece of them. We might not come back to the commandment question. Can it be commanded? Is it not commanded? How do you command someone to believe something? It's a general question. But I also want us to eventually land, just to give you a sense, by 8:30, I'm hoping, or maybe even a few minutes before that, to get to two Hasidic Torahs on this, two distinct teachers and how they understand the first commandment, and what it might mean for us in terms of our lives. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah? You guys have thoughts?
I just asked Paul, what's the difference? I don't want to take your time now.
No,
what's the difference between a commandment and a covenant? I've always looked at this as a covenant.
Right. So, essentially, in covenantal relationships, the substance of the covenant has to do with things that we are mutually agreed or obligating ourselves to do, right? It's not just the notion of a relational matrix is purely, the content of the relationship is the relationship, is not a biblical covenantal relationship. In covenantal relationships, there are an agreed upon obligations one to the other. That's the model, like any treaty, right? This is the nature of the relationship. I am obligating myself to you, and here are the enumerated obligations. You are obligated to me, and so on. If you look back to the covenantal Genesis narratives, there's a lot of conditional language. If you do this, then I will do this, right? And so there's something binding us that is behavioral and it underscores the nature of the relationship, right? It's husband and wife have obligations, or whatever in marital context have obligations to each other. So it's true, there is a covenant between God and the people, but the covenant has elements of it in terms of obligations as well. And these are some of the obligations. Okay, so let's look at the first thing I want to take up is the word ani and anochi and the possibility. Let's just bracket the question of the commandment and let's look at the use of the particular way that God introduces God's self. You see source 1 on page 1? This is from Exodus 6. This is when God and Moses are having a conversation after Moses has failed already to get the people to listen. Right? Moshe has already been to the people, it didn't go well, now he comes back to God, and God's trying to convince him to go back into the land. I will take for you to me as a people, and I will be for you a God. Right? This is relational. And in becoming your God, vidatem, and you will know, ki ani Adonai Elohechem. You will then know that I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. Hamotzi etchem, who makes you with the bread. Hamotzi etchem, who will take you out mitachat tzivlot Mitzrayim, from beneath the burdens, the sufferings, the enslavement of Egypt. Right, that's another God defined God's self to the people there as the one who is the Redeemer. I am the one who breaks the shackles of your enslavement and your degradation. And the word I here is ani. That's the most common form of I, right? Ani. Yeah? I'll bring you to the land as I have raised my hand right? I've sworn it. That's the way Nasati Yedadi literally means I have raised my hand. In other words, I've taken an oath to give it to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I've given it to you as a Yerusha, as an inheritance. Ani Adonai. What's the term for identifying my I? Ani. It's me. Ani. Vayidaber Moshe came over Israel, v'lo shamu elav, v'lo shamu Moshe mikotz ruach over the kasha. Famous verse, right? It's in verse 10, 6:10. Moshe comes to the people and tells them, all the things that God said to say, and what? They couldn't hear what he said because they were too exhausted. They were burned out. They couldn't listen. Okay. Let's look at source number 2. Vayomer, Anochi Elohei Avicha. I am, in chapter 3, this is when, what is this moment? Where is when Moshe is earlier than the first source, right? Moshe comes to the burning bush and says, right, and God reveals God's self to Moshe. Vayomer, God says, let me introduce myself. Anochi. I am. Not Ani, right? Anochi, you see that? Anochi. Anochi Elohei Avicha. I am the God of your fathers, your ancestors. Elohei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And I am the God of each of them. Vayaster Moshe Panav. And Moshe hid his face. Becomes a theme. Moshe's face is a big theme in the Torah. God's face and Moshe's face. God's face, Moshe's face. Moshe hides his face. It's an interesting term also because that's what God usually does in the Bible. And God doesn't want to look at something. But here it's out of humility or out of fear. It says, Ki yarei me'habita, he was afraid to look at God. He hid his face. Okay. So something about this revelation seems very, very honest and very real, and Moshe gets it. God reveals God's self, but the revelation is such that Moshe has to hide his face. But in any event, Anochi is used, not Ani. Okay? Seems like God has to consistently introduce God's self. Tell them, I am Ani, and here it's Anochi. Okay? Let's look at the next source. Bottom page 1. Ve'ata, now, Lecha ve'eshlachecha paro v'otzev ami b'nei Yisrael. Now I will send you, right, to Pharaoh, and he will send forth my people from Egypt. And Moshe says to God, in verse 11, Mi anochi, who am I? Mi ani, it should say. Mi anochi, who am I? Ki elecha baro, who am I to go to Pharaoh? So who am I to this is a continuation of the prior moment, right? The Anochi is being used all over the place. This is the same revelation at the burning bush. Right? V'yomer ki ya'imach, I'll be with you. V'zedech ha'os. And this is the sign for you, ki Anochi shalachticha, that you will know Anochi sent you. V'hotziacha ta'ami Mitzrayim, when they come out of Egypt, tavdun et Elohim ala har zeh, you'll come and you'll serve God on this mountain, the mountain of God. V'yomer Moshe Elokim, hine Anochi ba el b'nei Yisrael, behold, Anochi, meaning I, will come to the children of Israel. And I'll say to them, if I come to the people of Israel and I'll say to them, Anochi, right, I will come to them and I'll say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me, and they'll say, what's his name? What should I say to them? Ma omar lechem. I am what I am. I am what I am, and you should tell them, Eheyeh sent me to you. Okay. What's being used here is the Anochi, in this whole story, Anochi. Anochi, God's other name, Eheyeh, is also the name that you have to tell them, the name of possibility. But Anochi is here being used by God and by Moshe. Okay? Let's go to the very first utterance. The next source on the bottom page 2. This is verse 1 of chapter 20. Vayidaber Elokim is called Dvarim Ha'ela Lemor, and Elokim sent all of these things, saying, Anochi Adonai Elohecha. I am Yod-Heh Vav-Heh, your God, Asher Hototicha Me'eret Mitzrayim Mibeit Avadim, who has taken you out of Egypt from the house of slavery, from the institution of slavery. Now, as soon as you turn the page, you realize that the rabbis and the Talmud are really bothered by the Ani and the Anochi, and this weird combination. It goes back and forth between Ani and Anochi, right? The first couple of sources that we saw, Ani is the most normal sense of I am, but here God says Anochi. So, in other words, we start off at the theophany or the burning bush divine revelation. There, Anochi is being used. With the first time God meets Moshe or Moshe meets God, Anochi is being used, plus the Ehyeh is thrown in. But then later on, right, in chapter 6, Ani is being used, right? When God says to them, go back to them and tell them who I am, Ani is being used. And then when we come back to chapter 20 now, in this first utterance of reintroduction, or maybe first time publicly introducing God's self, God comes back to the chapter 3 usage of the word Anochi. So it bothered the rabbis. So they had to come up with some reason why Anochi is being used. Okay? Why are we back at Anochi? Didn't we graduate into Ani? Is there a difference? Are they interchangeable? Are they just kind of like a grammatical, hey, listen, I don't care. So for the rabbis, Anochi becomes an acronym for something. And as soon as it becomes an acronym for something, you know that it bothered them. Why make an acronym out of it? Like it's clearly bothering them. Anochi. So says Rabbi Yochanan used to say to himself, we're on page 3 at the top of the page, okay? The top of the page. Rabbi Yochanan used to say to himself in the Talmud Shabbat, it's related, that this Rabbi Yochanan, who was an Amora, meaning he was a rabbi of the Talmudic period, right? Circa, right, he's somewhere between the 4th and the 8th century. Rabbi Yochanan would say, Anochi notarikon. This is a word in, I think it's a Greek word, notarikon. It means an acrostic. Ana, Aleph stands for Ana, Ani, which is I. Nafshi, my soul, is the Nun. Ana. Ktavit, Chaf, I've written, Yahavit, and I have given. Again, so here we go. Anochi is Aleph, Nun, Chaf, Yud. Those are the 4 letters of the word, right? Aleph, right? A, Nun, N, Ch, I. Anochi, I am. Ana stands for I. The Aleph stands for Ana, I. Kitavit, I have written. Yahavit, I have, right? Kitavit, Yahavit. I'm giving you my soul in my writing. What does Rabbi Yochanan say the word Anochi means? I have written my soul to you. Wow. And it's a love letter. I have infused my writing with my nefesh, with my soul. Yeah, did everybody get that? Maybe?
Yes.
You got it, right?
Seems a little complicated.
It's so complicated?
A little complicated.
Well, let's make it less complicated. So, I mean, it's complicated because it's, right? It's complicated always if like the whole Torah is written in Hebrew and Talmud in Aramaic, so it's complicated. But what's bothering them about this 4-letter word is that it seems to be, first of all, it's out of alignment with Ani. Why would God say Anochi? Why are we back to chapter 3? And so they don't have recourse to critical studies. They're not going to tell us something that you'll see in a moment that might be a little bit more elegant. But here he's saying something about this utterance, Anochi, and he says to himself, Ana nafshi kitavit yahavit. I have written my soul in and given it to you.
But who's the Ana?
Ana is God.
When it's God who says Anochi.
Right, God
Moshe
says-
also says it.
Right, Moshe uses the Anochi, right? For sure. But the problem is that God is using the Anochi here. And so what is Rabbi Yochanan trying to, in a complicated way, say in a much simpler, what is the simpler message of this complicated, convoluted acronym, it's an acronym.
It's a love letter.
Right, so, but what does that mean, right?
It's
What's the
used in a
problem
loving
he's trying to
context.
solve?
What's the problem that he's trying to solve, Paul Ullman says? What's the problem that Rabbi Yochanan is trying to solve? The 10 utterances are 10 obligations. And so before I give you what I'm asking of you, I want to tell you I love you. Rabbi Yochanan is wrestling with this moment of connect before you correct. connect before you correct is that, like, before I give you my list, my laundry list of covenantal commitments, lest you think this opening line is about some other, obligation, responsibility, to-do list. I just want you to know, from my perspective, Rabbi Yochanan says, that Anochi says everything. This is a love letter. And for Jews, law and love are not distinct. For us, we're about to get into the details of, how to create a holy world. But I want you to know, in these letters, I'm giving you my soul. And maybe it's not obvious, and it's complicated, and it's convoluted, and I could just tell you I love you, which, by the way, God does all over the place in various parts of the Torah. Ana nafshik davit yavit. Whenever I'm with a couple and we're about to do the ketubah signing, and we know that the ketubah in a marriage document is, the Torah is often analogized to a ketubah between God and the Jewish people. Right? I say we're about to sign this. It looks like a very legal document, and in fact it is. And there are many good reasons to have a more romantic version in the lingua franca, in your language. But in Judaism, law and love are not separate. Nomos and narrative are interwoven like a double helix of our connection to the divine. I love you, and I'm writing it to you, and you might not see it. But ana nafshi kitavit yavit. Anochi if Rabbi Yochanan is about love. So that's like a first moment. Yeah, Rachel.
I'm thinking in English tradition, God could be a we, the royal we. In our tradition, God is a singular. And that strikes me as very unusual with the way we think with our language.
One yet two, me and you.
Yeah, the royal we comes into play like in Genesis with "Let us make man," right?
Well, there you go.
Right.
It is there.
Right, it's there.
Okay,
but not. I wouldn't say it here, but I say in general, yeah, that's
Okay,
true. For sure.
okay, that makes me feel more comfortable.
Okay, great.
God has all power.
Yes, good.
It's not
Okay.
your regular standard
Robert,
lover. Yeah.
Okay. A little cream, yeah.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
this reminds me very quickly. I don't know, this is a little bit antiquated, but growing up, whenever I did something wrong, my mother would want, engage in physical punishment. But before she did that, she said, "I love you. This hurts me more than it hurts you. But I'm doing this for X, Y, and Z reason." Anyway.
Okay. I understand the intention.
So the
I
love
understand
is
the
there.
intention.
We have to follow these rules. The love is
Right.
there. I'm letting you know.
Right.
But you got to follow this, whatever it is, the rules.
Okay. Yeah. I think that. Yeah.
I'm not saying that this.
No. I understand. I don't think you're
So
alone.
that's the connection.
All right, so I want to see a different. So we want to move on from this for a second and offer another frame.
Sorry
Susan.
for interrupting him. Susan was raising her hand for a while.
Okay, so Carolyn, you don't need to tell me that in the future because I see Susan, and if I'm going to go on, I'm going to go on anyway. But I appreciate it. Susan. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love this. I love that interpretation about expressing the love before setting out what must be done, and what an amazing lesson that is for how we interact with each other. I feel like, at least I experience a lot of times, people go straight to the negative, like this is what's wrong, this is what's not working. And if we started with the strength and with the love and the care, that our messages that are more difficult to hear could be better received, and that we could better receive those messages from others. So I love that interpretation. I wanted to thank you.
Yeah, it's great. It's thank you, Rabbi Yochanan. So I'm just relating it a couple thousand years later. So it's a great piece here. We're going to come back to other interpretations of the word Anochi, but I want to look at a more psychologically complicated idea that I also love, and it's from the Tanchuma, the Midrash. So the Midrash Tanchuma says something that actually helps to explain a little bit of the sequencing here between chapter 3 and chapter 6, and then back to chapter 20. You see on the bottom of page 3. I'll read the Hebrew. Rabbi Nechemia wrote and said, "Anochi lashon mitzri." Anochi is actually an Egyptian word. You see this sometimes in the right. You see this sometimes in this kind of a critical approach of the Midrash. Like this is early rabbinic stuff. They say like God includes an Egyptian usage. Lama davar domeh. To what can this be compared? A parable. The melech shenishba beno, to a king whose son has been taken hostage or taken captive. The asa yomim rabim ima shavaim. He was many days as a hostage. Lamad sichatan she'otan hashva'i. He learned to speak the language of his captors. She'asa nikama b'oivav, when his father apparently comes to do revenge with his enemies or his captors. So he came. The father, I guess, came to speak with him, but he couldn't speak. He no longer could speak the original language. So what did he do? He started to speak in the language of the captors. Kach asa kadosh baruch hu im Yisrael. All those years that Israel was in Egypt, limdu sichastan shel Mitzrayim. They learned how to speak like the Egyptians. And when God redeemed them and God came to give them the Torah, they couldn't listen, they couldn't hear. And remember what happened in chapter 6? When Moshe comes to them and speaks to them and they can't hear? So here it's being understood as they couldn't understand. Because he was speaking to them in a different language. Right? They couldn't hear him. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hareini Mesich Imahem B'Lashon Mitzvah. I'm going to speak, I'll start off speaking in Egyptian. It's a radical, it's crazy. Anuch, like you can hear Anuch, like Anuch is like, apparently Anuch is like, sounds like Eknatan and Anuch. Adam shu mevakesh lomar lechavei b'Mitzrayim ani. When somebody wants to come and say the word ani, I, in Egyptian will say Anuch.
Same root.
Kach patach HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'lshonam v'amar Anochi. That's a crazy interpretation. Listen to this. Anochi, forget about Rabbi Yochanan, it's a love letter. God learns the language, God tries to find an opening. And so God is willing to speak in Egyptian to the slaves in order to open them to... Now, first of all, the Midrash is just remarkably... It's remarkable, it's heretical, it's beautiful, it's not elegant. I mean, only one word? I mean, come on, you knew more than one word in Egyptian. Why not have an entire chapter in Egyptian? I mean, it's not exactly just one word. Was it just came to teach us? But the first thing that God does when he speaks to the people, he says, it's like where's a delegation and, only one word of Spanish. You say, hola. And the person says hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Qué pasa? And you're like, no, it's now English only, right? That's the way, Anochi, people are like, Egyptian.
I love that.
I'm saying it's so weird, and at the same time, it's so amazing. Yeah, why do you love it, Paul? It's like,
Because it's so sensible.
Sensible.
They speak Egyptian.
Yeah.
They've been in Egypt for 450 years.
Right.
Of course,
Yeah.
the way to connect with them
Yeah.
is to speak in their own vernacular
Right.
immediately.
I love it too, but does it hold water? Is Anochi used pre-Egypt?
No, it is. It's also. But here's the question: in almost all of these, you have this when it came to the Torah said that when God says to Moshe, "Ushmi Adonai lo nodati lehem," and my name of Yud-Heh-Vav I never made known to the ancestors, and you go back through Genesis and you're like, wait a second, here it is, and here it is. Once you invite this, let's be. And we're going to go back through all iterations of Anochi and see, was it only in the Egyptian context or whatever,
scrutinize it
right?
too much.
But the Midrash is saying something that even if it's not, I'm sure a lot of ink was spilled to try to make it exactly perfect. But it makes sense in the sense Moshe, when God reveals God's self to Moshe in chapter 3 at the bush, God says, Anochi, right? So you think, so again, they were in Egypt for 400 years.
But also explain why Moshe uses it.
And why Moshe's using it. But even if it doesn't hold water, it's an amazing midrashic yearning. It's like this midrashic yearning comes from a problem that they're trying to solve for. And maybe the problem is why did God go from saying ani to anochi? It's a strange word. Maybe it's not a strange word. Maybe we should point out to the rabbis of the midrash, it's not such a strange word. It appears, but something in them wants to say that God knows how to speak to people who are standing, scared. There's nothing familiar, and this gesture means the world.
Yes.
Like the ability to locate the listener where they are, to bring them to where they are not yet, and that, wow, that's great, right? That's charisma. That's reading the room. That's a kind of empathic, locating of the other so that you can find them. They start the song at their key if you want to read, it's like, hey, where are you guys? Let me hear. It's like a tuning fork. God attunes to them and says, sing a note, and they're like, It's like Jacob Collier, like he's like, okay, now here. It's great. It's great pedagogy. Yes, birthday girl, Edith Sidney Foster.
Birthday girl.
I was going to say, maybe the Anochi is the only word that needs to be in Egyptian because it's the biggest leap they have to take, recognizing that it's God who's speaking to them, and it's not just about adjusting to a new life on sort of a physical plane level, but it's about adjusting to this new life on a soul level. And so maybe it's just, if they can get that word, then like the rest of it will come.
Right. So then that takes us to the next source, and I see Beth and I see Susan again, but let me just go to the next source. You should go to the next source. That is now the Rambam is in the house. Let's welcome the Rambam, okay, into our shul church in the middle of page 4. And this gets to something what I began the class with this morning, but it's something that Eden kind of also invited, which is this is the biggest leap and maybe the biggest, most essential moment for them. And so if you look at the Rambam here in his Foundations of the Torah, this is from what's known as the not the guide, but the Mishnah Torah, where he codified all of Jewish law and made it super neat and super container store-like. He writes, "V'yidiyas davar zeh," and knowing this matter, right, is a mandatory commandment. Mitzvahs aseh, right? The Rambam says you have to know this. Know what? Know that God is God, right? He sees the first moment of intimacy as a commandment. Like if you think there's any other God, if you think there's any other God, in other words, you have to know there's God and not know other gods. So he sees the 1-2 punch of the first 2 commandments as this is what you have to know and this is what you can't affirm, which is the second commandment. You can't have any other gods. No substitutes, right? No, sweet and low God, stevia God. You can't have any other substitute, right? Splenda God. No, it's got to be the real thing. And then he says, you are kofer bi'ikar, great rabbinic term for heresy, which is you are denying the essential, ikar, the essential thing, right? Shezeu ikar gadol shakol toli boy. This is the great essential principle. Everything is depending on this. This anochi is everything. This knowing of course God wants to translate that. Because you always have, I'm going out on a limb here just to go with Eden, if it's the most essential thing for them to know, you better be a good teacher and figure out a way for them to hear it, right? You better find a way to translate it and pointing out instructions. And you better lead them into this I am, as if your life depended on it, because everything depends on it. You gotta, Anochir then becomes not just a cultural extension or musical extension or a relational extension. It's also a teaching extension. It's you want them to know you. I really want to know you, right? Then you better say it in a way that I can hear it, because everything depends on it. It's the big leap. And so give me help me get there. And so the Rambam, right, knows that's what's happening, and of course that's exactly the people don't get it, and they get scared, and right in the story, and they move away, and that leads us. I don't have to go into this whole beautiful Torah about, did they hear the whole Anochi, or did they just hear the letter? There's something about this that is so overwhelming to their vessel that it has to be Anocht. It has to be Egyptian or Coptic. Yeah, Beth, go ahead.
Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to offer my own garbled etymology for Ani Anochi. In ancient Egypt, the Ankh was a symbol for the key of life. So I would say Ani Anochi means I am my key of life. To Bertie.
I am like what?
I am my key of life.
I am the key of life, or I am the
My
I am the key of life. To Bertie.
Shamati. Well, the key of life. Let's. I said I wanted to get to these two Hasidic masters, and we're right there. So can we hold off on any more comments, just to hear these two understandings of the Anochi, and then open it up for the last 10 minutes? Yeah. So let's look at the Ishbitzer on the bottom of page 11. For those of you who don't know, who haven't met the Ishbitzer yet, on the bottom of page 11, we have a little bit of a biography of him onto page 12 as well. So let's look at this translation. One of my favorite Torahs in the whole world. It's going to pick up a little bit on Beth. Everybody keeps saying things that build on the very next thing. I should have done the Hebrew. Okay, I didn't. I guess I forgot to put the Hebrew in. Did I? Anyway, lo chashuv. Anochi, says the Ishbitzer. The verse doesn't say ani, but it says Anochi. He notices this. For had it said ani, it would imply that at that moment the Holy One revealed all of his light to Israel in complete fullness. If that were so, they would no longer be able to delve deeper into his words. Everything would already have been disclosed. Let's stop there for a moment. The Ishbitzer is also troubled, just like Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud, and like the Midrash that says Anuch. You're troubled by the Anochi here as opposed to the Ani. And the Ishbitzer invites something. He says he's not going the direction of Coptic or that direction in particular, but he wants to argue that Ani is extremely intimate and it's like the essence of the person. And if God had given God's essence, it would have been all of God. Like you can't get a little bit of God, as it were. You get all of God, right? And so the Ishbitzer is introducing this idea that the Ani would have been the full divine light, kind of like Ein Sof in Kabbalah. The Ein Sof, which is without end, without any boundary, the purest of pure, the key of life, I would say. But he's going to argue that the little letter, the one letter that is the only letter that they don't share, those two words, Ani and Anochi, there's only one letter between them, and it's the little chaf in the cha of Anochi. You take out that chaf and you have just Ani. He says there's a reason why God puts that little chaf in there. And it's not Anuch necessarily, but it's kind of related to that. He says the chaf in Anochi indicates something not complete, only a likeness, a semblance, an approximation of the light that God will reveal in the future. The word chaf, the letter chaf rather, when you put it in front of a word, what does it do? It makes it a similitude, right? You like something, right? When you put chaf in front of something, ke, it says, oh, it's like this. It's not exactly this. They share, but they're not identical. They're only fraternal. So this little chaf in the middle of the eye is like saying, you're getting almost all of me. But that's a good thing. If I had given you all of me, you would not have to unpack more of me. If I would give you all of me, there would be nothing left for you to unpack more of me. Not me. Listen to this. He says, this is what is alluded to by day and night. I'm sorry, therefore the deeper person penetrates into the words of Torah, the more they come to see that until now they have been truly in the darkness. Day means that God opens the gates of wisdom to a person. Night means that a person must not imagine they have grasped everything in its fullness. For whatever they have attained is like night compared to the day before, the day that comes after. And this continues endlessly. Every day becomes night in relation to the greater light that comes after. Ultimately, everything is night compared to the light that God will reveal in the future. I'm not going to do this. So, and he says, that is why the commandment, you shall not make for yourself a graven image, follows immediately. The Zohar teaches, because it is written, carve for yourself, solecha. It therefore says, do not make for yourself a graven image. Meaning, do not make for yourself another Torah. The word pesel refers to something cut, measured, and fully finished, lacking nothing whatsoever. Such perfection exists only in the Torah of Moses. But in the human intellect, it is impossible to produce something in absolute completeness. The Roman emperor once said to Rabbi Yoshua ben Hanania, I too can make a Torah like Moses. He decreed that no fire be lit for 3 days, and during that time he saw smoke rising from one house, and when he questioned it, he was told that a nobleman had fallen ill and fire had to be permitted. Now indeed, according to our own holy Torah, saving a life overrides Shabbat. But the difference is this: one who violates Shabbat to save a life is not contradicting the Torah, because the Torah itself commands that saving a life overrides Shabbat. I'm not going to go on. Okay. No human being is capable of creating such a Torah that is complete. Right? In other words, for the Ishbitzer is essentially saying that when God puts the Chaf into the Anochi, it includes all future iterations of the upgrades in the software of the Torah. And if God had given the Torah in its completed form without those upgrades, it would not have met the imperfection of the world that is itself an expression of God's own incompleteness. This is so crazy. And therefore, it would not have included anyone who would try to then make a copy of the completed Torah would definitionally have missed its upgrades, which are uniquely a part of the unpacking of the divine in the world. So the Roman emperor can come along and say, like, oh, I can make a Torah just like Moshe. And then he tries to live in the fullness of that. And then he doesn't realize that the Jewish people had the upgrades also included in the chaf of God's I am. So that they would know that in the future, right, you can't light a fire unless you have to save someone's life. But you missed that part because it's in the chaf of Anochi. You think that the Torah is complete, but God gave it as a chaf, meaning it had to be unpacked in each successive generation. That God, as it were, admits that in the unfolding of the divine in the world, in the Buddha's formulation of emptiness and fullness, you can never get emptier than you were. That emptiness never unfolds. Everything is equally empty at all moments, but with every successive moment of time, there's more fullness in the world. And so this Ishbitzer Torah is about evolutionary, like divine evolution and human evolution. The Anochi, that little chaf that could, it's not I, because I would have been everything, Ein Sof. But the chaf is tzimtzum, it's constriction. It's like, I'm giving you part of me, but you want to know more of me? You better try. You better look. If I had given all of me, there would not have been more of me. And God says, right, I become more and more God through your agency, through your yearning to know me.
There's a song in this, Rabbi.
I just want, so I see hands up, so I want to give the Zoomers a chance here, and then I want the Opter Rebbe also to come in and give us his Torah. Okay, Aunt Joni, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think I unmuted now. It's such a treat to be here, Reb David. You know, usually I'm at work, so it's really a treat to be able to be here this morning. I got off for good behavior for the weather. So I wanted to say, though, you say, isn't it also so that, mere mortals like us, all of the divine and all of that light would be more than we could handle or assimilate or understand? Wouldn't it be too overwhelming? I mean, you say, you were saying that, if I give you all of me, there won't be more of me to discover or uncover. But isn't it also that all of the divine, and all of that light would be so overwhelming, too overwhelming for mere mortals to be able to deal with and assimilate. I think we learned that from one of the Hasidic masters.
Yeah. Yes. So yes. That's the problem. The problem with the text is not that. The problem with the text is the text seems to be saying that God's intention was. It makes it seem as if God's self was God could have decided to give us all of God instead of part of God. But we all know that even from the text alone, the simple meaning of the Exodus narrative is that when God revealed God's self, even that was too much for the people, right? Even the Anochi was too much. So you're right. There is a problem of how much God we can handle. But what's unique about the Ishbitzer is, I think, and radical. Again, every Hasidic master interprets it for their own purposes. Every midrash has their own purpose for its interpretive move. The interpretive move here is so beautiful because its heresy is that it essentially claims that the perfect Torah is imperfect Torah. That's what's heretical about this, is that the only perfect Torah, it's like, the phrase from the Kutzker, the only whole thing in the world is a broken heart. The Ishbitzer might say the only perfect Torah is a Torah that can be, that needs interpretation and needs upgrading, and that's not a bug in the system, that's a feature. And that's great. It's so great. It's so great. Now, I told you I wanted the last 15 or so minutes until 10 o'clock. I'll let me just one more Torah from the Hasidic masters from Apt, because Heschel has been on my heart mind all week because of a Black Jewish PBS series that just aired last week with Henry Louis Gates and Susanna Heschel, and I was at a premiere of it the other night, and I saw Susanna. And I've been thinking about Heschel, so I wanted to bring something from his namesake. He was named for the original Abraham Joshua Heschel from Opt, and you can see a biography of him on page 16 or 15. Let's see, where's the biography of Heschel?
15.
On 15. Okay, great. So let's look at his Torah, and it's on the bottom of page 16, okay? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Skip over the one on the top of 16. I got it there, but there's no way. I always do too much. Okay, on the bottom of page 16. Ready? Yeah. I am the Lord your God. Anochi Adonai Elohecha. He's quoting this fragment that we've been wrestling with for the last hour. Ready? Yes. He quotes the Midrash first. The Midrash teaches, I made them, I will carry them. I made the human being, and I carried them, placing them in the Garden of Eden. Another interpretation, I made Israel, as it is written, is it not he who made you? And I will carry you, I carried you on eagle's wings. I will bear you when you sinned with the golden calf, and I will rescue you, as it is said, and God said, I have forgiven according to your word. To understand the Midrash, now the words of the Abt already. Abraham Joshua Heschel on page 17. To understand this Midrash, it's such a beautiful thing that we're reading his words, right? I don't think there's no doubt in my mind that when I'm 100, 200, 300 years from now, nobody's going to be reading my words. But it's amazing to think that we're reading the words of this Rebbe, right? It's amazing. Scripture says, Mi yaleh b'har Adonai u'mi yakum b'mkom kodsho niki chapayim uvar levav. He quotes, to understand the Midrash, he's now introducing a third layer. Right? The Midrash is a second layer, the Torah text is the first layer, and now he's introducing a third layer. He says, to understand this Midrash, I have to quote another piece of scripture where the psalmist says, who can ascend God's mountain and who can stand in God's holy place? Only one who is clean of hands and pure of heart. This is the matter. A person must lift their soul and raise it back to its source and root, especially one who has done tshuva. Previously, their soul was cast into the depths of despair, God forbid, and now it must be drawn out and elevated level by level until it reaches God. Now, it is indeed possible for a person to lift their soul in a single moment, to ascend to the highest level through sincere regret and heartfelt repentance. But such an ascent cannot endure. The person inevitably falls from that level. Because their repentance is not yet complete. They are not yet cleansed of their earlier transgressions, and therefore, even though they ascend once and lift their soul to God, they cannot remain there, and they fall again from that level. This is why the verse asks two questions. Who can ascend God's mountain? This is relatively easy. But more importantly, who can stand in that place? Right? I see people smiling. Yeah, isn't that great? It's different. To ascend the mountain is one thing, but staying there is another thing. The real question is not ascent, but stability. Who can remain fixed like a firmly planted peg that never slips? Continuity. You can enter the stream, but can you stay there? Continuity of practice, continuity of mind, stable. Object stability, object constancy, right? It's not you show up once for a birthday party, but are you there every day? You show up once when we really needed you, but what about in the intermediate days? And the answer is one with clean hands, one who has repented properly and purified themselves from past wrongdoing, and a pure heart, whose heart is refined and cleansed of all inner dross, who has not lifted their soul in vain, whose yearning for God is not mixed with falsehood or worldly illusions, but is directed to God alone, has not sworn deceitfully, alluding to the oath the soul takes before entering the world to remain faithful to God, and such a person will receive blessing from God. But understand this. Anyone with true insight knows they are not deserving of a reward from God. They are empty-handed, lacking sufficient Torah and mitzvot. All goodness they receive is purely tzedakah and chesed, unearned grace. But when a person acknowledges this, offering praise and gratitude to God, recognizing that all good comes from divine compassion, they generate immense delight above and draw down further blessing upon Israel through mercy and love, as it is said, whether this way or that, you are all called my children. And thus they will receive blessing from God means they lift the blessing itself back to God, saying, this goodness is from God's generosity and not from my merit. And by doing that, they draw forth even greater compassion and kindness from God of their salvation, abundant mercy, and enduring love upon Israel. Now, he then says, this last page, and then we'll stop. As long as the Jewish soul is constricted and oppressed, embedded in the lowliness of this world, it cannot, on its own, yearn to return to its source. It therefore requires assistance from God. Sounds like the first step in the 12-step program, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, how can I have to first acknowledge that I'm powerless on some level, meaning my own will can't do it. Thy will be done. It's like, I'll try, but I'll always get stuck in my ego to get out of it. My ego will do it and then I'll get stuck again, I'll get stuck. God sends an illumination from the radiance of God's presence. When this light reaches a person, the soul begins to long and yearn for its root. Just reading the New York Times this morning about this, Michael Pollan's going to have a new book out about consciousness.
Really?
And about what does it mean to have to be conscious, to be a toaster, to be a bat, what is it on the inside? And we don't know where thoughts come from. We don't know where anything comes from. So we get an illumination, and it's something in us says we want to be awake, we want to know, we want to heal, we want to be present. We don't know where it comes from. It's not me. I didn't do it. I don't think my thoughts. They just come, for the most part. When the light reaches a person, the soul begins to long and yearn to connect back to its source. But in God's kindness, it doesn't reveal this radiance beyond what a person can bear. To reveal too much would annihilate the self entirely. And so this was also true in the creation of the world. God contracted God's self through many constrictions so that each world could endure existence. This is very much back to Aunt Joni, right? And so too with the human being. At a low level, the divine light revealed is minimal. But as you ascend, greater light is then revealed and the soul's yearning intensifies. Thus one rises from level to level until one reaches an extraordinarily high state, approaching, as it were, the realm of emanation, and within emanation, drawing even closer to the divine essence itself, right? And all of this is pure kindness. This is why the verse says, I am the Lord your God, in the singular, not right? it's your God, not it's personal. I need Elohecha. It doesn't say we, right? It's not I am.
It's not you all.
It's not y'all God. Y'all, not your. I translated it right. It's not y'all's God. It's I am your God. For God spoke to each individual according to their capacity, according to what their soul could bear. Understand this well. This Opter piece, and then we're going to open it up now, is essentially, it's really an extension of what Aunt Joni was saying, and also what Anuch and Beth was saying, and it's an extension of what the Ishbitzer was saying, is that God was the ultimate pedagogue, saying, whether, since you only speak Egyptian, I'll find you and give you what you can hear, Anuch-i, or because I am the key, but you can't get all of it, as it were. So the Ishbitzer says, so I gave you it as Anochi, like a little bit, right? I gave you what you can understand, but I trust that you will unpack more and more, or in a more radical vein, I didn't do it because of your capacity to bear it, but because it would not have made sense. I'm still unfolding as you are, and so in future generations you will unpack more of who I am, because all of who I am would then lack if I didn't give it to you in this concentrated form. Or in this Aptaredi piece, which is very much what Aunt Joni was saying, that God says, I will meet you at your level, and then as your yearning intensifies and as you become more and more humbled and also more desirous of that light and not the prior state, the constricted state, the slave state, slave to your desires, your ambitions, slave to your ego, you'll have more and more of this light, Anochi, and know, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am your God, the one that you need at this moment, not more than what you can handle. So all of that, let's open it up, okay? We'll start with Ben, and we'll make our way around the room and then into the Zoom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I wanted to bring in this earlier notion of treaties in terms of covenantal relationships, and treaties are between sovereigns. And then, so that's to me like the marriage contractual relationship type of relationship that we're talking about here. And the other one that you were talking about is the parental relationship. It's like, I love you, and you know, the father or parent and child, and we are the children, right? And that's not the same kind of treaty relationship. That's not a transactional relationship. So it's like these two kind of...
And the mix in the Torah.
And
right?
the mix,
They're
right.
mixed.
They
Because
mix.
the Torah, you know, we're not sovereign.
Exactly, right. But that's the point I was just about to make, which is like, we and God cannot be equal sovereigns. The whole notion of a treaty is that it's between equal sovereigns. And so I think the Anochi is, as this is saying, it's a constriction of God where God is bringing a part of themselves to a place that can make a covenant. And we are ascending to try to be a sufficiently enlightened sovereign to be able to do these commandments, to be able to meet this constricted partial part of God. And that's the nature of the covenant. So each is kind of stretching to meet and never quite meets, and that's how I'm conceiving of it.
I love that. Well, that's important. That's an important frame. Okay. Chazan.
Hashem is offering,
You have to come closer, I think, to the
Hashem is offering
microphone.
His compassion and His light, in great abundance. However, the implication here is that we really can never really make full tshuva. That's what it's saying. If you do this and that, I'll send more light, I'll send more empathy.
Really? I thought he said that if you do it from a place of purity, that tshuva and regret and deep regret, and even more, so that you'll continue
You'll get
to
higher
receive
and you'll
higher.
continue, but you'll never really make full tshuva.
Full tshuva?
I'm saying,
Yes.
Well, heaven is endless, maybe.
it just,
Hope not.
you have to know that going in, that you're never going to get full tshuva. You go as high as you can go, but
Okay. He says that you can get to the place where you're touching like the eminent, like atzilut of atzilut. You're in the inside.
Okay.
But I think that the beginning he says is that you do it with, and it's partial, and then you can't stabilize. But I do believe he thinks that you can stabilize if you come from a place of humility and a place of asking for grace. I think that there's a piece in here, maybe you're right, maybe that's not complete, but what's most important, I think, in the Opter is that if we continue to empty ourselves and ask to be filled or ask to be guided, that humility, I think for the Opter, I don't know if you guys agree with that theology, but that he says is kind of a never-ending invitation to more and more of divinity to be revealed. Which feels very experientially true to me, that my moments of connection with the divine are almost always when I empty myself of what I thought of my identification with my own ideas or my own way or my own perspective, that I then am invited into a much bigger place. And even the gesture of humbling myself or asking is a kind of way of self-transcendence. Yeah, what are you
I'm just wondering, but you can't really stay there.
Yeah, it's hard to stay.
I'm just saying you have to know that going in.
Maybe we stay at the level that we're at for a certain period of time before we. Yeah, does it ever fully stabilize? I mean, that's a really great question. I think that the spiritual traditions seem to claim that you can stabilize at levels, but there are infinite number of levels. So you don't ever arrive perfectly because you fall immediately. But that you then rise up to another level. That's the Rav Nachman Torah. He says, like, when we receive Torah, Nasa v'nishma, we said we will do and we will hear. He said, we will do and we will hear was not a one-time moment. It's the nature of every moment is one part Nasa, the next part Nishma. Like, this moment is Nasa, the next moment is Nishma. We will do, we will hear. We will do, we will hear. It's like a dance.
That's why the sacrifices were continuous.
Even now.
If you can accept that, you can keep going.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you can accept that, you can keep going. Yes. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Can I just present a counter?
But no, because I want to keep going. People who are waiting patiently. Say Tomas,
so just
and then Amy, and then
keep going. I love that folk etymology of the Ankh with the Anoki.
Yeah,
and the kind of
that's best.
The Egyptianness of the Hebrew word, and I love it because the Coptic cross as it turned into,
absolutely.
and the reason is it maps so well into our discourse, right? Like that's the Ankh, the T shape with the loop on top. And the reason I love
it. Can you show it to the
yes.
Did they see it? Can you guys see? I mean, he's
where do I point it?
I think over here.
Yeah, an owl.
There you go.
The owl. The Ankh.
I don't know if
the Ankh is stick figure.
So it's a hieroglyph. It's a very mysterious symbol. And the reason why I love the reference to it is
it's like Venus, right?
Well, there's
in the glyph, right?
Yeah, no, precisely.
The circle of infinity above the cross.
There's so much you can do with it, right? Yeah. Like it's the sky above the ground. It's the circular above the linear. It's the yoni and the lingam. It's all of these things. But there are three in like archaeology. There's three very strict interpretations of what this hieroglyph is a picture of, and they're all contradictory, but the three interpretations of the symbol map perfectly onto our discourse today. The first interpretation is that it's a key, like the key of life.
The key of life.
There are little pictures of Egyptians holding
I see
it.
Beth smiling, yeah.
You can imagine it, like putting it in the,
awesome.
And so the key of life.
Right, it opens the door.
Right, opens the door, so if God is the key, we are the lock. If we are emptying ourselves, we are the empty keyhole or the empty lock, and the divine is the key coming in, turning the lock, opening the door, right? So you have to empty yourself out if you want to be the lock that's opened, right? To receive the key. So that's a